No, like. Okay, here's.
There's nothing off limits here. Wait, what the? Let's watch Mirai no basketball.
Oh, she's Michael Jordan.
Fuck.
Oh shit! Hang on, I'm saving it as that. Mirai.
Michael Jordan. God.
Hey, welcome to Log Time Podcast, where we're talking about Kyoukai Kanata this week and how it has the best yaoi armpit scenes I have ever seen outside of doujinshi.
I mean,
Like,
you know,
no shit, that shit is hot.
well, you know, I don't look. I told you already. I don't look at yaoi armpit doujinshi, but you know, hey, it might be out there. I'm not gonna check though. You can guarantee that.
Oh, I bet you it's out there. So
I'm sure it is.
So Kyoukai Kanata, guys.
You look disgusting.
And I think we specifically wanted to pick this one this week because it was like one that the community is just so fucking skewed on. Like, it's like half the people hate it, half the people love it kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Except, apparently, it is the 67th most popular on my anime list.
This is the weirdest thing.
think.
Yeah, it's number 67. And it has like a 7.88.
What the heck, Mal? Mal? What the fuck are you doing?
Which I love too, because like you started spouting off to us a lot of reviews about the show, and it was like, this show fucking sucks. It's terrible. 10 out of 10. I was like, what?
It's just, we were trying to go for something that seemed to be more divided in how people think about it. Because, I mean, we did Bakano and Death Parade.
Which we're all
Basically
like, oh my
things
gosh,
that are-
these are amazing.
Yeah, so it's just kind of weird that it seems like there's this very vocal outpouring of like, this sucks, but then it's like, but
Which-
we like it.
Yeah,
But
which is
then it's
funny
got a really high
because
score. Like,
yeah, and not
it's
only
not
that,
bad.
but like we liked it. Like, I don't think any of us were like, no, that was a terrible show. It was like, I don't think it's perfect, but I do think it was good. I
Yeah.
don't have many problems with it.
It was an enjoyable ride.
So,
oh, it was a ride though.
how would you define? Not define. What would you say the synopsis of Kyoukai Kanata is? Because I actually don't know if I have a good synopsis for this one.
So
Boy meets girl. Boy and girl fight nightmare shade creatures.
Yeah, they fight things.
They fight things. And girl can make a sword
they
with
fight
her
things.
blood. Girl can make a sword with her blood.
Don't touch her blood.
Don't touch her blood.
Don't touch.
This, other than that, I can say that it's like it doesn't become like a super serious show, which is something that I appreciate. Like throughout the show, it has those like more emotional moments. It can have darker moments, but at the same time, it like keeps making jokes the entire time to keep it very fun and lighthearted. I appreciated that. It could have been a total edge fest, and they decided to take a different approach of like blending the comedy throughout the show. Even during some of the scenes where it was like super dead serious, they had a couple of nice little jokes.
Yeah.
because they have their own wheelhouse with these very specific, like, show specific in jokes about any number of things from Akihito protagonist's glasses fetish to, actually I guess a lot of them are kind of revolved around fetishes, because then there's Hiromi's Siscon thing and all that jazz.
Yeah, because he has this whole Siscon thing about his sister, which
Yeah.
is the entire time is made as a joke. I don't think anything's really anything about it. It's just this big joke throughout the show.
Mm-hmm.
It knows how to effectively interweave actual like serious plot and world building and things of this nature with its own brand of comedy, and I appreciate that
Yeah.
quite a lot.
And the something that I really appreciate about the show is that it's Kyoto Animation doing it, and they have so good like comedic timing for everything in the show. It's wonderful.
I mean, they've been perfecting that technique for 15 years.
Yeah, and like it borrows a lot from like the K-On! And different things like that, where like the expressions and actual physical comedy is just really solid throughout the show.
Because like we get the first episode with this really nicely choreographed fight scene that basically ends in our other protagonist, Kuriyama Mirai, just stopping with the bucket on her head.
Yeah.
Like everything comes to a complete standstill.
That was actually fantastic. You have this like dramatic battle between the two main characters, the boy and the girl, Mirai and I can never do his name, Akihito. And it's great because at the end of it, she like just rips through a fucking locker in like a horror style thing, and then all of a sudden she just pops up and there's a bucket on her head.
Yeah,
it was very funny.
She's just standing there with the bucket. My favorite part was she took it off her head. And she was just like really disappointed with herself that she was like, "Man, I got fooled by a bucket. I can't believe this.
Could have been so much better.
This could have gone so many different ways, but this is not one I wanted it to go."
The show's really great about that. So what was a few things that you guys wanted to talk about whenever it came to this show?
Well, since I can clearly see your screen, let's go ahead and talk about the heart of the problem here, episode 6.
You want to just jump into episode 6?
Let's just jump right into episode 6. It's right at the top there.
Okay.
Let's not dance around the topic.
So let's build this up a little bit and then explain why episode 6 is such a problem to so many people.
So
the show as a whole,
I guess episodes 1 through 5 are just this interesting blend of like we're getting a lot of deeper aspects of we're building characters and also building the plot of this whole thing. It's like you have these spirit hunters. They hunt out shades, which are nightmares that born from human evil. And they kill them, and then they sell them to get money, and then they just keep everybody happy because they're killing shades, which could cause problems. And they're doing a lot of interesting things with the characters throughout that. It's like we starting to get some development between our two main characters, Mirai and Akihito, and then we have the other characters who all form this group that we're having a lot of interesting dynamics between them all. And then episode 6 rolls around, and it's a one-off episode.
Yeah, it is the definition of a one-off episode.
Which it's like the show has always been funny, but like the whole point of episode 6 was just fan service and comedy was the entire thing.
And even the fan service itself is actually not much of a focus for this episode, surprisingly.
Right, it's like they have a lot of times where they're like, because they're trying to attract this demon, one of the shades, to like go after one of them and keep him distracted so that they can attack him. And the shade is attracted by the female form, which is just straight up written into the show for a fan service episode. So like Mirai has to like pose and then like pose and then pose, and like the camera does the whole panning shot and stuff like that. But it's like she's never like horribly unclothed or something like that. And even then it's only for a couple seconds, and it's just kind of funny, and then it moves on.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, what was the major problem that people state with episode 6?
Well, let me tell you. When I read a lot of like reviews and watched a lot of video reviews on episode 6, everyone just kind of tossed it aside, and they basically said it's a bunch of basically. I didn't really say it was garbage. They just kind of said that it was, oh, this is a filler episode, and that's it. Let's move on. First of all, there's a lot more, I think, to the episode than just like it's filler. I think that's kind of like writing it off. But a problem that a lot of people had with it is that it kind of didn't fit with the story. And because everyone kind of built this like, oh, it's kind of like a slightly edgy story, and it doesn't have anything to do with it. And people, it kind of, I guess, stemmed from the core issue that there was a lot of these jokes that people already kind of didn't like because of how they were kind of, the in jokes of the show, and they were kind of about fetishes, as we already talked about. A lot of people already
and a
didn't
bunch
like
of other
that.
things too.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of other things, but most of the people honed in on the fetish thing like really hard. Like they absolutely just honed in on it and were like, "Those jokes need to go." And then this was like the breaking point for them.
Okay.
And they were just like, I'm done with the show. Like that's it. So episode 6 was the last straw for them, and they just dropped it.
Which is funny to me that you would drop a show because of a one-off episode.
Yeah. Right. Which I find extremely like.
Yeah. Which is clearly a one-off episode too.
Because the one-off episode is absolutely indicative of the entire show's quality.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So,
oh yeah,
totes. But
like it's got Kyoto written all over it. And I guess some people had a problem with that too. But...
So, would you say that people were going into this with like a different expectation of what they wanted out of the show? Because the show does have its moments where it can get like dark or it can get kind of mysterious or edgy. But anytime that it starts approaching what I would define as like edgy, and it's just like, oh, so edgy, it starts breaking it up by like making it a little bit more fun, putting a couple of physical comedy slapstick jokes in there or something like that. And so that it never shows itself as being just like this dark, depressing, edgy kind of thing like the entire time, and just people didn't like that.
It never reaches critical mass with its kind of like edgelord status.
Yeah, it's very aware of what it's doing, and so it tries to break it up, and it's. I said this a million times while I was watching the show, but like it's kind of like how Firefly does it, even though that has nothing to do with anime. But like it's like each episode can actually get really dark, like major characters can die and stuff like that, but at the same time it breaks that up with a lot of like
really comedy.
Yeah, really funny jokes to lighten it up. It's like the difference between like old style Star Wars where there was just tons of like nice little comedy and banter between the characters, and then like episodes 1 through 3 which were just had none of that. And it showed because there was a much lesser quality show. I mean, it had movies. It had plenty of other stuff wrong with it, but that was a big thing that people pointed out that they missed.
So if you're going into episode 6 with this understanding, then that the show is supposed to be about this kind of grim, dark-y kind of story, you're obviously not going to get what you are looking for out of this episode then.
Right.
It's not.
It's not at all.
And to be back to your question though, basically, I guess people did really expect something different, and this kind of actually all started back like 2 seasons before the anime aired, way back when the PV first came out. And the PV is framed in a particular way that if you watch that and then got hyped for the anime, considering that Kyoto Animation was doing something different and unique and exciting, and which it still is very unique from Kyoto Animation, but if you're expecting it to be like way different from what they originally do, like people might get this expectation like, whoa, this is gonna be like a dark, edgy show, like this is gonna be like Bones, or this is gonna be like Madhouse, this is gonna be like whatever other studios do edgy shows, or just any edgy show.
Yeah, I just looked up some random thing for like a gag from the show, and the second thing on here is AMV smells like Teen Spirit. Like people wanted this to be edgy. They have anime music videos with Nirvana as the soundtrack.
These are the kind of things you Google, like you Google AMV and you like Google like Linkin Park AMV, and like this would be like one of the first things that would come up.
This is ridiculous. It's not supposed to be like that, like dark and edgy show. It has a lot of darker elements, but it never like. I would say that it's the same way of like going to American audiences again. It's the same way with like The Incredibles. The Incredibles actually had a lot of really dark shit in that movie, but it never felt dark because they always knew how to frame it in a much lighter tone. And I was like, that's super cool. And the same thing like with this show. They know how to frame it. They're very aware of what they're doing and the type of story that they want to tell. And so they're able to frame the darker stuff and still keep the show relatively lighthearted around a lot of those darker elements.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
brief aside, I don't know how you got from The Incredibles here, because that's not an example that I would have figured would have come contextually.
I've had a lot of weird examples. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
Like,
I don't mind. It was a good one, but
a good example. But
it was
just
incredible.
Like,
Good job.
Please no.
oh my god.
We didn't do a goof in the intro. I had to.
Well, we've definitely done it now.
Yeah.
So
Anyways.
I guess should we explain, because we kind of just skimmed right over it, what the whole plot of the filler episode is?
Yeah. So episode 6's basic idea is there is a dream shade going around. They call it a fruit type dream shade. So it kind of looks like this big kind of like grape with a huge eye or something on it. And it's apparently supposed to be worth around like 500,000 yen or something like that if you are to slay it and then cash it in.
Yeah.
And so Mirai, being broke as hell, gets really excited and goes and runs off to fight it. Before finding out that there's a reason why it hasn't been hunted often. It's because it has a built-in defense mechanism where if it is approached by someone, it just sprays out these really pungent juice, wave-like.
That just stays with you for like the next week. Like it's worse than a skunk kind of thing.
Yeah, you don't want that on you. Nope.
Yeah.
And so the basic idea of the whole episode then is, okay, well, we can't not get this thing. How are Mirai and the group going to hunt this thing down?
Right.
And it gets real goofy real quick.
Yeah, because
it gets extremely goofy because it starts off with just her fighting it, and then he tries to help her, and then they slowly just keep dragging the entire like main cast into it. Like, how are we gonna do this?
Yeah, first it's 1, then it's 2, then it's like 3, then it's like 5.
Yeah. And eventually they just kind of get to the point where they learn that apparently that someone defeated a creature either like this one or very similar to it. They're like, it likes this song. So
yeah, it likes the song and it likes whenever people dance to it. Which is granted, plot-wise, it's like one of the stupidest things that I had ever heard while I was watching through this show. But like the way that it does the joke much later on, it starts to parody a lot of like idol stuff whenever it does it, and it just gets so damn funny whenever it does.
Oh, man.
It's just a perfect parody of like any idol anime ever. And it's very funny, and then it ends on a final joke where like the whole thing just blows over on them because they don't do it right. It's kind of a Monty Python joke at the end with the Trojan cow, where they send the cow in and then they forget to put themselves in the cow. Yeah, and in this one they like do the dance number in order to attract the monster, but then they forget. Oh yeah, one of us was not supposed to be a part of the dance number, so it could sneak up from behind and kill it. So they all get blasted away regardless.
Oh man, it's an absolute the what makes this episode so great to me is that they executed all the jokes really well. And then the ending joke was just the whole episode was an escalation to this one big joke, and then they pulled the joke off like perfectly.
It was
it's absolutely hilarious.
And it was great because like it really does continue on with this whole sort of tone that the show sets for itself. Because even though this episode has like ramped up the goofiness like a bajillion levels, it's still, you know, it is taking itself seriously and is still trying to be Kyoukai no Kanata, but it is also very clearly not taking itself super seriously for this episode.
Right.
And granted, it's kind of a nice break, considering the first 4 or 5 episodes were pretty hot and heavy with world building and setting up the stakes for characters' motivations and things like that. It's like, okay, cool. Let's cool our jets for a sec here.
Dude, I just love this idol montage. It's just showing a whole bunch of pictures of shit that's never happened in the show, and they're just like, look how dramatic it is. Look how far they've come within a week to like practice this dance number. It's fucking stupid.
I love it. It tells a great story in like the 2 minutes that it has.
Yeah.
And it's a goofball story too. It's great.
I guess the ultimate thing though is like, I get that people might not have got what they wanted from this episode, but I also don't get why it was the catalyst for so many people dropping the show
Yeah,
either.
for dropping the show.
Like, it seems a little extreme to me, considering, like, I mean, yeah, again, it's not super in line with what came before it, tone-wise, but, like, it's not drop-worthy material.
And I'd like to point out that this show even starts out with a joke. Like, as I'm going through on my screen and like looking through it a couple episodes, the very first thing that we see is like this chick that like looks like she's about to commit suicide. So he comes up to the roof and tries to stop her. And the way that he stops her is saying, "You shouldn't kill yourself because you look really cute in glasses." And then she just stabs him through the fucking heart. Like, that's how the show starts.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like an anime viewer thing, and I don't want to say like everybody thought that, or all anime viewers think that way. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that maybe a particular people would look at this and be like, okay, it's anime, you know, like it's the first episode, anything can happen, and so they just kind of like let it slide. But then they started not liking it, and they realized this wasn't what they wanted, and then episode 6 is the breaking point. I think that's kind of what happened.
They went in expecting something, and it just at that point that was when they had enough.
Yeah.
I did have one issue with episode 6, though.
Okay.
I will say there was one issue. Why didn't Mirai just fling her blood at it?
Yeah, no, some of the posts I was reading
because we wouldn't have this episode, but it's just the whole time it was just pounding in my head. This is the solution, but it's like, again, I realized if she did that, we wouldn't get the idol montage.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, the funny thing is episode 6, I actually found a tweet from the director that even said, "Okay, guys, this is just a break." He said, okay, and I quote, "Sorry about this. Just this once, I requested to write a silly episode to insert into the series. Next week, we'll return to the original tone material from the novels."
Oh, God.
Why would he apologize?
He had to apologize because I guess that many people were upset.
And
That's
it's like,
insane.
We've gone over this before with Mahoka, where the last 2 episodes of the series were like, what the fuck did they do? But at the same time, I didn't rate that show badly. It had a really, really weird Jesus ending that was kind of terrible. But like, I still thought the show as a whole, all like what, 24, 25 episodes of it?
26.
All 26 of the episodes since the last 2 were really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So like, I didn't think that it completely destroyed the show and just dropped the show right then and there. Well, it's the end of the show, but like, I didn't think that it deserved to get like a 4 out of 10 or something like that on a 1 to 10 scale. I was like, no, it's still 7 out of 10 material. It's just, it could have been 9 out of 10. It just fucked up its ending.
Yeah.
And the thing with this show is that it's not even like the last 2 episodes of the show like Mahoka was. Like in this one, it's literally just a filler episode.
Yeah, and it is the midway point of the series as well.
It's like
it basically acts as a transition into like the second half of the main story.
Which then starts getting really serious, like people wanted. Sure, but it still fits like a lot of the tone that it started at the beginning. It has a lot of the jokes and a lot of fun stuff, but it definitely got a lot more serious as it went on. And it's like, I don't know why you would drop it over a filler episode. I mean, if that, I didn't really like the filler episode for Gurren Lagann, but which granted was really fucking funny. But like, I didn't like it at the time that I was watching the show, but then I didn't drop the show. I was like, no, I'm still enjoying the show. I'm going to keep watching.
I guess maybe we're just unique in that regard, but I guess most people just kind of get fed up a lot. Maybe they just, I don't really know the reasoning behind it. I just feel like people get really frustrated really fast and they need to slow down.
Like, granted, like I can kind of get into the mindset of just anything that does act as filler is just rage inducing because
it's not hard
as someone as someone who way back in the day, like when I used to be more or less like watched Naruto with a religious fervor, when it ended up being like 30 episodes at a time of filler or something of that nature. I'm like, No, stop, please.
Yeah, I mean it's the whole problem
Yeah,
of like
definitely.
DBZ and Frieza saying this planet will explode in 5 minutes, and then 29 episodes later they're still fucking staring at each other. Like,
And so it's basically at that point, like, even though this one episode of filler isn't like the massive amount of garbage and like nonsensical stuff that is not at all even like character development kind of filler, that's the kind of association that comes with it. So in that sense, I can maybe see how people might connect it that way.
And basically it's the label people put on it. Like if you label it as filler, people assume all filler is the same, and it's gonna be look at Railgun. Like it had filler arcs at the end. Like we haven't talked about Railgun, but I'm gonna talk about it now. I mean, it had complete filler arcs, and they were fine. But
but like that, I still was relatively okay with a lot of stuff in Railgun. It may have been filler, but at least it was entertaining. It wasn't like this is fucking terrible. Just get with the rest of the show. And in that same way, I think I felt this way about Beyond the Horizon, Kyoukai. I'm going to butcher that. Kyoukai no Kanata, where it's one episode where they were having fun. Let them have fun.
It's fun.
It's not the end of the world. That comes later in the series.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah.
So that's episode 6, which is, I guess, the big reason why people hate the show.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess they just don't like the humor that goes along with it.
But
they missed out.
Since we are talking about something that a lot of people see as a problem, and we are kind of defending it, but I will admit that like it is a filler episode, and after a certain point, I was like, I kind of want to get back to the rest of it. After it hit like 20 minutes.
I wanted the whole show to be like this.
Oh, really? Oh, jeez. Please, no. This is not.
I would have watched the whole show if it was like this.
This is not a slice of life, Matt.
No. If they would have just put an idol segment in the episode, that would have fit perfectly.
Yeah, but
I would have watched it. That's just Matt, me, though.
Matt, your problem is that you like a lot of idol shows.
This isn't the
problem.
This isn't the AKB48 anime adaptation.
But since we are talking about like what's supposed to be the worst part of the show, let me talk about like real quick just a couple of things that I noted before this happened that were really good, because I have them in my notes and I want to talk about them. Fuck you.
Right.
Like for instance, I was looking at episode 2. There's a couple of scenes where like Mirai, the I don't know what you should call it, pink-haired. Anime confuses me because sometimes it's pink and they're like, oh, she's
orange.
that redheaded girl, and I'm like, what?
It's orange.
It's like this orange color. But Mirai, the
I don't know. Okay.
main female lead of the show, there's a lot of times in the very beginning of the show where she's very distant with the other characters. And Kyoto Ani does a really good job of showing that throughout the show. And there's a story reason for it, but also like it's very clearly shown in the animation, which is what Kyoto Animation does really freaking well. I love them for it. Because like there's a lot of scenes where like
it's in the name.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenes. There's specifically a scene that jumped out to me where they're waiting for the train, and Mirai just came into town and she's just meeting with some of these people for the first time. So like the rest of the group is actually ahead of her, literally in front of her, talking amongst themselves, and she's behind them. And like at first their conversation seems very jokey and fun, and it seems like everybody's kind of into it. And then we look back at her, and she like fakes a smile for maybe a second, and then as the train passes, they do this really neat thing of like, since the train passes, all of a sudden there's like a darkening over her face of the actual light in the scene, and like as soon as that happens, we see her suddenly downcast, and I'm like, oh damn, that was good. It was really well timed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Kyoto Animation's really good at that.
Right, and we see as well that as soon as she becomes downcast and that darkening happens, what brightens her up is the train suddenly passes and light comes into the scene, and then we suddenly see her, because the main protagonist of the series, Akihito, includes her in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so suddenly this train passes and the light and the scene lights up, and we see her look up instead of being downcast, and I was like, fucking clever. Like, really, really well done with the animation throughout the show. Like, even when it's being goofy, it's just so well done with the animation.
Oh, the animation all throughout is stellar.
Oh, absolutely. And they do a lot of really good connections, like you were saying, where they will cue in like a few like seemingly minor details with much larger concepts or things of this nature. Like there was in episode at the end of episode 9, there's a whole arc where Mirai has to end up fighting Akihito, and it is her intention that she has to kill him for a much larger plot point, but that's not super important. But so at the end of the episode, the ending theme starts playing, and she takes off her glasses and lays them down, and then goes in for the killing blow. And so, for me, the whole idea of her like actually like setting aside her glasses, which was kind of the whole thing that started off her and Akito's like interactions.
Right, because he's got a
coming and
thing.
screaming, "You look amazing in glasses!"
Yeah,
Someone
he's got a
good
thing
as you
for
in
glasses.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so her laying down these glasses and actually waiting until she did that to actually try to take Akito out, like it just said volumes in that. Okay, well, I have to set aside everything that we have forged together as a bond in these last like 6 months or so in this one tiny gesture. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. They don't even have to say anything. There's not even like flashbacks or anything when they do it. It's just that one fluid motion, and it's like, oh my god, gives me chills.
Yeah, it gave me chills for you just talking about it. So.
Yeah, which I'm showing it on the screen right now. But like, I also thought that was something that they did really well, and I think it was like episode 11 or 12. I'll have to look at that real quick. But like, they open up the first, I want to say like 2 or 3 minutes of the show, no dialogue whatsoever. All you see is just because at this point in the show, she's facing the big baddie, which is like this evil god orb thingy that she's stuck inside. Mirai is, and it's like winter and it's a dark scene and she's like fighting her way through it, but like the entire time, absolutely no dialogue. The entire plot, her struggle, and her emotions throughout the entire scene are told through you directly through the animation, and with not a single word spoken. And I was like, that is really well done on their part, that they can tell a story that way and not have to rely on some like voiceover to let you know what's going on.
Yeah. Kyoto Animation's always been really good with that. This is actually kind of a funnily enough, this is kind of the breaking point for Kyoto Animation as well, because this was an experimental kind of show with something like, because it wasn't like full on slice of life like everything they've done before. This is definitely something more dramatic. And because I think their last works were like Chutu and like Kyoukai, and they weren't.
I think
exactly...
Kyoukai came out right before this.
Yeah, and they kind of were doing a lot of. It's almost like they got like new animation software or something, and they were just really like pushing it to the limits, to the boundaries, if you will.
Because it's beyond the boundary. I get you. Please continue.
Okay, it wasn't funny. But yeah, I feel like they were really pushing the limits of it, the new animation technique or whatever they were using, and that was kind of what set the precedent for shows like Amagi Brilliant Park and like Chutu Ren, not so much, but whatever. I don't know what other Kyoto Animation shows came after this. I completely forgot. But definitely for Amagi, it definitely set the bar there. And you can kind of just see like that same kind of animation, and maybe it is just technology evolving, but you can definitely see their animation kind of ramped up from like the style used in like maybe, I don't want to say like K-On, it's a little dated, but like you can see there's just from Fioka's quality and Kyoka no Kanata's quality, and it's like it's way up there.
Yeah, and like compare that to a lot of their
Hibiki
earlier
Euphonium.
work.
That's the other one I'm thinking.
Yes, Hibiki, man, the production value on that is through the
freaking
roof.
Euphonium.
Yeah.
But like you can definitely see like where this is where they started to like hone their craft about how they're doing the animation just solid throughout it. Because like I wouldn't say that Haruhi was bad, but if you like look back at like Lucky Star, and it's a lot very much the art style, but it's also I don't think that they've kind of hit their stride at that point. I don't think that they've hit like their quality level just yet with like definitely. Lucky Star compared to something like Hyouka.
They definitely hit it much closer with Kyoukai, and this was just another step for them in that direction that they wanted to go. So I think that's the reason why the animation's so iconic in this show. Just personal.
So I'm trying to look through. There's a couple other neat little animation things that it does. Like, in episode 10, so like we talked about before, how she stabs Akihito, and there's this interesting thing where like after it stabs him, that's the episode. The very next episode after that, episode 10, we're just dropped into it with like no information about what the fuck's going on. It's like we see half of the episode is in this like wintry scene where Akihito's dead, and then the other half of the show it's like summertime and happy and like he's still alive. And it keeps switching between these two scenes. And a very interesting thing on their part thematically that I noticed was it keeps switching between winter and summer, and then finally we learn that the summertime is a dream, and then the wintertime is this mirage world, and we go back to reality, and so these two paths just like join into one. We go back into reality. It's autumn, which is the in between summer and winter, and I thought that was really clever. It's not told.
Did you really have to explain what autumn was?
Well, shut up. All right, but like I thought it was very cool this was told completely without like any like look. It's autumn now. It's like he just looks out the window and all of a sudden the leaves are yellow and orange hues. And
it's just like, well, that's not what either of those two were before.
Right.
So.
And you find out that reality is somewhere in between those two states. And I thought that was very clever from an animation standpoint.
Yeah, that is really clever. I like that.
It's in between two boundaries, you could say.
We need to stop with the boundaries jokes.
No.
It's been unleashed. You can't stop it.
We haven't crossed that line just yet.
Was there something else that you guys wanted to talk about besides really shitty jokes?
I always want to talk about really shitty jokes, but
it's kind of like my thing, so we kind of need those.
There is one big thing that we do need to talk about eventually, which is the ending, because Matt, I know you and I actually talked about this.
Okay, and I can tell I don't know Race's opinion, but I have a feeling that this is going to be interesting.
Well, let me ask you, Race, because Matt and I ended up talking about it because we both kind of ended the show at the same time last night. What was your opinion on the ending, and specifically, what did you not like about the ending, or what did you like about the ending?
Did you like the whole ending?
So I don't dislike the ending. I like the ending in a general sense of how they are able to close out the series for the most part and get some sense of closure for the different plot lines and things of that nature. It's fine. But I don't know. The thing about the end is Mirai does ultimately sacrifice herself so that Akihito can continue to live. And there's this whole dialogue where Akihito says, there's this one point when he was talking to Mirai, he says, I don't want to live in a world built on your sacrifice. A future that is built on your sacrifice holds no meaning at all. But he's musing to himself and he says, well, that's what I yelled out back then, but here I am having accepted and living in that very future. And so he goes on to talk about, you're never going to have a world without darkness, but the world's never going to be overtaken by darkness. It's always going to be in this sort of liminal state. You cannot get rid of it, but it will not overcome anything. And
he also kind of mentions like but there's always like a little bit of hope. It's not as like doom and gloom as it makes.
No. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say he ultimately says everything is a balance. So you might not get everything that you want. You might not ultimately pull out all the promises or ideals that you wanted to embody. And that's something that Hiromi and the rest of the Nase clan talks about, when it is revealed that Izumi has been harboring a shade and things of that nature. And he says, I'm not going to be like you. You can't keep your ideals and promises. You can't get everything you want. And so it seemed like through this whole last episode, they were echoing this idea of, yes, some things can go very well, like we kind of stopped the world from ending, so that's great.
That's good.
But there's also like it is ultimately this balance, because I mean Mirai, she died, and so there is this balance. Things aren't always going to be super great, and so it felt to me then like they were pushing this idea really hard. I thought, okay, yeah, like Mirai's dead, that's harsh, that sucks, but it is reflecting what they're saying here. So it felt to me when Mirai just magically comes back for no reason that it really kind of cheapened everything they were trying to say.
Which is the last 20 seconds of the show, by the way.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
It didn't actually affect how I perceived the rest of the show or anything. I'm just like, come on, really? Like it didn't thematically resonate for me. But that's a small nitpicky thing. But just anyway.
And for me,
For me,
I actually had a different view of the ending, which is why I was very excited to hear what yours was. Because for me, I was actually very, very happy that she lived. Because she dies, quote unquote, dies in episode 9.
Yeah.
And then that's when she was supposed to have done her sacrifice. And then throughout episodes 10 through 12, the entire story is we can't let her die. That's the entire story. Up until the very last, I want to say like 2 minutes of the show, that was the entire story. Is she sacrificed herself because she thought it was the right thing to do, and then Protag Akihito's like, it wasn't the right thing to do, so we should resolve that. And it pushes through that throughout the entire thing until the point when finally, after they defeat the monster, she just disappears into dust. And they're like, yeah, and so now this is the way that we feel it is, and then they bring her back. For me, it felt like that last 2 minutes where he's talking about a balance between this and this is so thematically different from the entire point of the show up until that point. It was like we had this idea of we're going to correct a wrong within this world, and we're going to save the day while we're doing it, and then all of a sudden we say, never mind, that's not what we're going to do. And then at the very end, they say, actually, that is what we're going to do. It's like this weird bridge between this and this, where it's a small little section where they're like, well, maybe we're going to change our mind about that. And then all of a sudden, they're like, never mind. We wanted a happy ending.
And I can totally respect that. And believe me, I'd rather have a universe of this show where Mirai does live, because she's adorable.
But she was also a great character, too.
Yeah. I mean, that encompasses everything. Don't get sassy with me.
Right.
But yeah, no, and that's the thing. But like, I totally get that, and I understand the like thematic dissonance and things like that. That's okay. I wish it would have been consistent.
Yes.
With how it was presented.
I think that's.
I wish it would also have given some sort of actual explanation for how they brought her back, because it was like, good magic, I don't got to explain.
She literally just shows back up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sit right with me either.
Yeah.
So.
It's like magic resurrection, no explanation, and no thematic consistency.
Right.
And that was ultimately what the issue was for me.
And like I even stated here, as far as the feeling that I had on it was like, she died in episode 9, and she gave herself up for him, and then everything working up to that, they start working towards like, no, we're gonna save her because there was no reason for her to sacrifice herself. It was not in the right. And then I literally put in my notes, I was like, I'm actually really annoyed at how she's just cracking and fading away, saying, "Lol, I'm a figment of your subconscious," and it just blows away into dust. And what I said about the death in the final episode, before they go into this big thing about how we need a balance and different things like that, is that up until this point of the show, her dying was completely unnecessary. It's not like Death Parade, where in the final part of it, which we've talked about in another episode of Lockdown Podcast, so spoiler. In the final part of it, like our main character dies. There's a reason why she has to die. It's because from the very beginning she was dead and had to be judged for her sins. And so finally, at the very end, she is finally judged and is able to pass on.
Right.
That is thematically complete. But in this show, there was no reason for her to even die in the first place. it was unnecessary and it didn't need to be in there. And it served no larger purpose or theme on the show for her to die. It's just this like little gut punch, and then all of a sudden we have the sad moment, and then we bring her back.
I mean, it was basically we had to raise dramatic stakes somehow.
Right.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I said actually. And pretty much, if you're kind of like coming at this from like a production standpoint, you always want your product to be really consistent with what you're doing. And I feel like somewhere along the line between episodes 9 and 12, the director was kind of like, I don't know if he got lost or I don't know what he was trying to do, but he seemed to lose his way. Like, either it doesn't matter which, you both argued great viewpoints, completely different sides, but it's basically the same problem, is that it was consistent one way and not the other.
Yeah.
And why was it done? We don't know. And I guess that was kind of the problem with the ending. And I mean, I don't know why it was done that way, and I don't know if the director was just being like, "Ooh, this is gonna be sad. I'm gonna pull a Junmaida here and resurrect her." And I don't know what he was trying to do.
It almost seems like what they did is they wrote like all the episodes up to episode like halfway through 12, and then they wrote the ending, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, we need to connect these two things. Let's just write this part." And it's so thematically different from everything else on the show. And it's really weird that these like 2 minutes leading up to the last 30 seconds where she suddenly appears again and everything's happy. It's so weird that is so dissonant from the rest of the work. It almost seems like either somebody else wrote those 2 minutes, or like they wrote it at some other time during the process and just forgot that they actually need to like make it match everything else.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting in of itself, because Kyoto Animation's been known for having like really like consistent like shows and direction. Like that's really weird for Kyoto Animation, and I'm not saying that this is definitely something that happened, but I'm saying that maybe there was like a scheduling derp somewhere, and
they usually even have like consistence between directors on a show, because I know like Heian and a couple others actually had a couple different directors working on different episodes.
Yeah, they're usually really good about that, but for some reason something wasn't communicated properly, and something broke somewhere. I don't really know what happened. It was, I mean, this guy's obviously still working on stuff, so it's obviously didn't hurt him too bad in the company scheme of things, which I guess is good, because what he did was really good. I like his stuff.
And really between episode 6 and the ending, those are the two things that I think everybody that looks at the show points out as being done wrong in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what breaks the show for a lot of people, and that's why they were like, it's fucking terrible, absolutely terrible. Which I wouldn't say that episode 6 we defended, but like I wouldn't say that the ending was an atrocity. It was just really inconsistent with itself, but it still ended in a way that I was like, okay.
Well, and the thing is, like, we're talking about the last episode as if these last 2 minutes are like indicative of everything that happens. The entirety of the actual last episode leading up to this is so well choreographed and put together.
Like everything.
The fucking scooter ride. Oh my god,
dude, some fully cool shit. Like it was great.
Like blowing up a sinking iceberg kind of thing, like on a moped.
And they kept that consistency of like really dark thematic elements with really funny things, because we find out that this super big baddie was living inside Akihito the entire time, and it's a part of him and it's this like evil god basically at this point. And like it gets to this point where like there are two characters finally are able to meet and they're fighting with each other, and they're like, what do we do in order to take this down? Like, what's your weakness? Because this is you that we're fighting. And he was like, well, I don't like fish. And so they just start spouting to the god in the sky, where it's like just like cod, or I can't remember what the fish was, but it was just like cod, and it, like they expected to be like, oh shit, yeah, that's pretty terrible. Oh man.
Triggered.
And it actually is funny because it does seem like it was triggered, because they're like cod, and then all of a sudden like 12 fire bolts rain down from the sky.
It's like, can
Shut
it
up,
actually hear
shut
us?
up.
It's like,
Wait,
yes.
can it hear us? Is it actually angry now?
Yeah.
Like,
Which is
is
just-
that working?
It's amazing because it's a super serious scene the entire time, and then there's just making, and then they
Absolutely.
just start making these jokes throughout the entire thing, and it matches the show really well. It's like they're at it's the end of the world as we know it, and these guys feel fine. Like legitimately, they are just laughing it up the entire time while this is going on, and they keep pointing out at each other. They're like, "Shouldn't we be really serious right now?" And they're like, and then something funny happens to them, and they're just reacting to it. It was
Yeah.
really funny.
It's all consistent until it gets not consistent.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all consistent until last 2 minutes of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think you guys are right. I think people look at episode 6, they look at the ending, and they're like, nope, that's it. And
Yeah.
then people hate it.
To
And
compare
then
the
they're like,
ending,
and then they're like, Joanne, can't make any good shows anymore. They can't do not Moe. Like, these are legit reviews that I read. They're like, they can't do anything outside of Moe. Look at them. They're attempting right now. They're not doing it.
which is
And I'm like,
fucking
dead.
stupid.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
stop. Just no.
Just
Stop.
one show is not a whole studio, y'all.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, anyway.
I mean, a great example of that is just look at the difference between like, I want to say like, just look at the difference between like Lucky Star and Hyouka, in Kyoto and Annie. Like they're nothing alike, absolutely nothing alike.
And they're both wildly successful shows.
Yeah, it's like look at Trigger with like Inferno Cop, and then look at them doing like Little Witch Academia, which by the way were made right after each other. Like it was Inferno Cop and then Little Witch Academia, and they're dramatically different from each other in animation,
Oh,
in
yeah.
style, in comedy, in themes. It's like a single show does not make a studio.
And by the way, just because a studio works on something doesn't mean it's going to follow what it previously did, because directors can change, because
Mhm.
that's a thing.
Especially for like a studio like Kyoto Animation, where they have a bunch of directors actually.
They have a lot
and,
of really good directors,
and they're really good, and they all
and they're all different.
yeah, they're all different. They all like doing things in a different way. When they all work on the same show, they'll try to be consistent with each other, and it's almost always really consistent. But like between shows, they have completely different styles of doing things.
hmm
And so
Yeah.
it doesn't make one thing. And also on the point of like how people like bitch about this ending, and this might trigger a few people, but like it's kind of like Mass Effect 3 in a lot of ways, where people just like fucking raged over Mass Effect 3, which is funny because a game that is like 40 to 60 hours long, and literally the last 15 minutes is what people say make this the shittiest game ever made.
You know what's really funny? I don't even know anything about Mass Effect 3 besides the ending was trash.
And
I
the
don't
funny thing,
either.
and the funny thing is,
That's all I know.
And I know it's not bad because everyone liked the other games. So
yeah, and honestly,
I don't
it's
part to
still
hear about 3. Like,
and,
what the
and
heck?
once again, it's 40 to 60 hours of gameplay, and then the last 15 minutes, suddenly everybody's like, "It's fucking the shittiest game I've ever played." And the ending's not bad. Like once they patched it, perfectly fine. I don't necessarily have like a major problem with it.
Once they patched
You
it,
can't
it was
can't patch anime.
I mean, but like even without the patch, it wasn't that it was atrocious or like an honestly terrible ending. It was just people felt unfulfilled, which I guess is the problem with this show, is that it has that one thing that it did wrong. Mass Effect 3, it was unfulfilled with a very long running series. With this game or with this show, it's just that it had this great consistency throughout, and then all of a sudden the last 2 minutes are a little inconsistent with each other about what the message it's trying to say is. But that doesn't make it a bad show.
Oh no, this is a relatively good show, especially for animation kind of stepping out of the box a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this is
It's
definitely
it's a solid venture in a new direction. for them.
Especially after episode 6, like the director was totally right, because he was like, we're gonna go back to that tone that we like. It really did. Immediately after episode 6, it was like they still had a lot of that comedy and a lot of the like fun and positive tones to the show, but like holy shit, some crazy shit happened that was like really awesome.
Whoa.
And, like a very
yeah.
It suddenly took this story that seemed like pretty nice and shonen-y, and suddenly made this like really deep and intricate plot that has to do with a lot of really interesting variables. And that was amazing. Like, that's really awesome. So it's surprising that somebody is just like, I didn't like the last 2 minutes, so it's a shit show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't control people's opinions, but
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
we don't think like that. So there's that.
So we're
Try
so
not to.
superior. I still have emotional reactions. Plus, certain things about a show, I'm totally draws me in. Like specifically, like a slice of life for me, or like a school idol anime for you, man. It's just like, even if the show's not that great, and I'll fully admit that it's not that great, but I'll still watch it anyways because it's fun.
Yeah.
And I understand that we can have a bias like that, but in the case of this show, like I honestly think that it's a situation where, trying to look at it as objectively as I can, it's not a bad show. Like, I don't know why people freak the fuck out about it.
Yeah, there was a lot of overreaction.
Yeah.
And I still think it really stems from that PV where people were like, "Ooh, this music's dark." And you know what the funny thing is? That's just the B side of the opening. Like that's how the opening has like a single and then a B side.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's just a B side song of the opening, the actual opening for the show.
Which, I mean, once they actually sat down and watched the actual opening for the show, the actual opening for the show has like a ton of comedy mixed in with all the actiony elements. So I'm really confused what they expected whenever they sat down to watch the show.
I don't know.
But anyways, yeah. So that's
when you get hype, you can't slow the brakes down.
Yeah.
It's hard to slow down the hype train. So
choo choo.
So anything else you guys want to talk about?
I feel like we hit all the main things I wanted to hit on.
Yeah, I feel like we kind of hit everything that I wanted to talk about. So.
All right. Well, I guess since we hit everything we want to talk about, that's Kyoukai no Kanata, which we all said was good. It gets a little inconsistent about the ending, but regardless of that, like the rest of the show, we're totally on board for it. If somebody wants to check it out, like it's really good. I know we spoiled a few things for you, but it's a really good show, and we do recommend watching it. So if there's nothing else, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.
Bye.